My dear fearless female founders, welcome to our session about a very interesting topic on how to start your podcast, how to create your podcast. And I will explain a little bit why I decided to invite Yvonne. Yvonne is actually working for a company who is doing company which is doing podcasts. So she has quite an experience in that. This is the first reason. And the second reason is that, of course, I have my own interest. I'm interested in doing podcasts myself, but all the information I was finding on all the courses that I had a look at, they were just so complex. It's a little bit like with investments, when I was searching like how to do stock investments and I was looking at the course, it was like, after watching the course, I was more confused than before the course. And the same is with podcasts. And I thought, what can be difficult about creating podcasts? Like, you record audio, you upload it into the storage, like, I don't know, Spotify or places like this, and off you go. But when I was listening to all those programs, I even read a book about it, and I was like, my God, where do I start? So that's why Yvonne is here. Maybe it still will be complicated, but at least we have an opportunity to ask questions.
Yes.
So whoever is watching, tell me.
Oh no, said yes, definitely. They can ask questions.
Do ask questions. I haven't checked yet. I cannot see if you are watching us or not, because timing is 11:30. Maybe you're working, so maybe you will be watching the video later, but doesn't prevent you from asking questions later as well. Okay, so let's go. Yvonne, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit more, you're welcome.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Hi, guys. So a little bit about me. I am Canadian, but I live in Belgium. I am a marketing manager. So I've been doing marketing for the last 6 to 7 years. And I am working as the marketing and communications and community manager for a company called Spreaker. And so what Spreaker is it's a hosting platform. And so it's where you can host your podcast and you can distribute it and you can do a lot of different cool things with it. So that's what I do. And it also has led me to creating my own podcast. I said, I've never created a podcast before when I started this job. And I thought that why not start doing it, because I have the opportunity. And it led me to ask a lot of questions. And I think the first question was, should I create a podcast? I mean, what I think is really problematic for us as entrepreneurs, as digital marketers, is that everyone's telling you you need to be everywhere. You need to do everything, So we're doing Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and TikTok, and now there's podcasts, and you're like, oh my God, do I need to do this? And the short answer is no, you don't need to do a podcast. I mean, it's not necessary. It's great for specific people. For example, if you hate showing your face in videos, podcasts can be really great for you to be able to communicate just via voice without having to show your face. A lot of people sometimes don't like to show their face. But let me just give you a couple of stats on why maybe you should consider podcasting. So Voxnest, which is our parent company, they come out with a lot of stats. And in 2019, we had the State of the Podcast Universe report. And it said that there are over 800,000 podcasts in existence, and the industry is on track to make $1 billion in ad revenue by 2021. And that there are there's 62 million listeners a weekly, listening weekly to podcasts. It is.
Can I interrupt you? So you're saying 800,000 podcasts, meaning the podcast themselves or channels?
No, the podcast itself. So
the podcasts themselves. Okay.
I'll do the little snippet. It says, with over 800,000 podcasts in existence and the industry on track to make 1 billion in ad revenue by 2021, there are a whole lot of factors to unpack when it comes to examining what caused podcasts to become part of more than 62 million listeners' weekly routines in 2019. So that's a lot. There's a lot of people out there. And the thing is that it's actually not as saturated. It's not saturated as, like Facebook and Instagram are becoming oversaturated. Podcasting is still something that is relatively new. So you can still like really go into it and do something really cool with it. So basically, if you have like an idea, or you love talking, or you just love that, you're very passionate about something, then podcasting can be right for you. There's a really great example of someone called Eric Sue. He is a marketer, and he said that he went into podcasts not because he wanted like people to listen, but because he wanted to connect with people who were previously unconnectable, like people who wouldn't talk to him about something. Then podcasting can be.
Sorry, I'm checking if we are online, and you who is saying hello, because someone is saying hello. Sorry about that. Sorry. It's Alada who is watching, so we'll just say wave to Alada. Hi,
Alada. So basically, like there's two options, right? You can reach out to someone that you admire, maybe like a Fortune 500 founder or whatever. And instead of saying, hey, can I take you out for coffee to pick your brain? Which usually people are like, oh my God, I don't have time. You can go with, hey, I have a podcast. I have a podcast that I talk to Fortune 500 company founders about what made them successful. Would you be able to come on and share your story? And they're probably more eager to go with number two than number one. So it's a great avenue to open doors for you. I mean, Eric said that, he had, I think, like 20 downloads for his podcast at the beginning, but he was talking with like Fortune 500 founders and connecting with them. And he used that to he leveraged himself differently after a while. Now he has a podcast with Neil Patel, which is this huge guy, called The Marketing Show. And so they have like millions of downloads now, but that's how he started with podcasting. Podcasting has been around for 10 years, I think more than 10 years. So it's been around for a while. And the first thing you need to do is, do I want to do a podcast? The second is, what should I do my podcast about? And there are so many topics you can choose from. And there's a lot of people doing those topics as well. So when I was thinking about my podcast, I know that in the Facebook group, I asked a bunch of you about my name, and a lot of you gave me some great tips. But you have to think of a name with your topic. And this goes back into, how do you want to brand yourself? Who are your customer? Like, who is your target audience? And that will reflect in your name. So if you want to do just females that are solopreneurs, that, I don't know, that only work with eco-sustainable products, well, then you should have a name that reflects that, and a cover art that reflects that. The great thing, and I guess the negative thing as well, is that if you want to do the same name as someone else, that's fine. I mean, you can do that. You're allowed to do that. It's not like a URL where someone blocks a URL and you can't use that URL anymore. If you want to call your show the same as another one, you can do that. But I mean, it depends if you really want to do that, because people might get confused in the end if they're trying to search for it.
Can I have a question, both to you and to the audience who is listening to us? When you're choosing the name, you probably need to understand also how people are searching for podcasts. So coming from that, the first thing, if you know what is the biggest podcast platform or platforms where you can literally go and put your keywords and see what kind of podcast channels are already there.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And the second one is probably more the question to the audience. How do you guys find podcasts? Is it by referral? Does it happen that you actually go to a podcasting platform and search for a certain podcast? Voila.
So the way that I did it was I looked on Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. So
But I didn't even know Google Podcast exists. My
yeah,
God.
so Google Podcasts. You can just do that, and I searched it in there, and then I saw. So my podcast is all about branding, and so I Googled branding. I Googled how to brand your business. I Googled different things, and there was a lot of people that came up, and I looked through all of them, and I looked at their names, their descriptions, and also their cover art, which is like the three things that like really draw and pick up on some, like that's the first thing people see. To answer your question, your second question, the majority of podcasts that I actually listen to, I found via other promotional activities. So I never, but Spotify is trying to become like the new big thing. And so they're really trying to push podcasts on there. So I don't know if someone can tell me that if they listen to podcasts on Spotify, they just bought Joe Rogan's podcast for like 100 or 200 million euros or dollars. And to make it exclusively on Spotify, they're like trying to kill it on that front. They're really invested. So if a giant like Spotify is that invested in podcasts, you're just like, wait, let me see. I think there's something here, like why are they investing so much money into something, So maybe I should get into this as well. And so it's for me, I follow a lot of digital marketing gurus, and they all have podcasts, and they always talk about their podcasts, and they promote it either in their Instagram feeds or in their blogs. And I usually end up following it that way. So it's usually like I'm launching a swimwear company, and then I found this girl that also has an ethical brand, and then she also has a podcast. And so I kind of like connected it that way. So, oh, look, someone has a podcast.
And Entrepreneur. Yeah, I will have a look who it is, because I can see it on Facebook, but I cannot see it on the platform that we're using now for streaming.
Like anonymous user. Wanted to connect with people.
Another thing I wanted to mention really quickly, because we started talking about Spotify and all those platforms, as an independent, ladies, whoever is listening to us, as an independent, when you use those kind of platforms like Spotify for business purposes, you can expand that.
So for example, I listen to different, I really like for branding, for example, and another way that I find them is YouTube, because there's so many people nowadays that are doing video podcasts where they are podcasting, but they're also taping themselves and uploading it on YouTube. And so you have a lot of those kinds of individuals doing that. And I find it on YouTube. Like, I personally love the Chris Do. I found him on Instagram. He's all about branding. And then he is on YouTube, and I started listening to his podcasts on YouTube, and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Chris?
Chris, CHRISDO. He has a branding agency called Future. I think The Future or Future, but Future with no E. So it's FUTUR.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, he interviews some really interesting people. Sorry, not persons. And, because for me, for example, I love branding. So it's all about just like, there's so many different types. Like, it's not only about digital marketing. Podcasts is not only for digital marketers. There's true crime podcasts, which is really huge in the States, where they talk about crimes. And yeah, there's food podcasts, there's gospel podcasts, everything that you can think about, there's a podcast for that. So if you think like, oh no, well, I'm not in digital marketing, I can't have a podcast. Yes, you can. I mean, there's people that are teaching French. I think I don't know if that podcast that you have does that.
Yeah, it's Camille, by the way. Camille, hi. Great that you're here with us today. What is your podcast about?
Yeah, tell us. I know someone that has insane amount of downloads who teaches French on their podcast,
I
and
need that one. I need that one.
you guys know I don't remember the name, but like he's making a good amount of money from it. And the problem with podcasts, it's about sex. Okay, cool. See, look at that. It's
I need to follow that one as well.
I mean, there's this podcast that's called like, I forgot what the name was. It's like Who's Your Daddy or My Daddy or something like that. And they ended up getting a deal for $500,000 per year just to provide one podcast per week. And they talk about like life and family and sex and all this kinds of stuff. And they're insanely popular. So that's really cool. I'm a sexologist, so we talk about intimacy and relationship. That's a great topic. I would love to listen to that. If you want to drop your link into the comment section, I would love to check that out. So yeah, so I mean, again, it really depends. And the thing is, so you find your name and then you have to do your description. And this is where keywords go into. So what are your keywords? What keywords do you want people to find you for? So, I mean, I'm going to give the only examples of branding because that's my experience, but you can adapt it to whatever your topic and theme is. Jenna Kutcher, which is like a great, she's this great digital marketing person. She has a lot of questions at the beginning of her podcasts. So she does things like, let me see if I can grab it very quickly. Her podcast is called Goal Digger. I love that name, Goal Digger. Yeah. And so maybe see Google Podcast. Sorry, guys. She starts with a lot of questions in terms of like, so how do I build my dream job? How do I make money online? Am I ready to leave my 9-to-5? How can I create passive income? How can I grow my Instagram following? And the biggest question of all, can I really turn my passion into profits? Welcome to the Goal Digger podcast, where we answer all of these questions and so much more. I mean, that's keywords like rich right there.
This is her opener. This is the opener of her podcast.
No, this is the description. The description that she has on all of the platforms. So when you go into her podcast, on Apple Podcasts, on wherever you listen to your podcast, this is the about this show, and this is her description. So if people are searching in like Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, like passive income, how do I start passive income, or how do I get my dream job? She's going to come up. She has all those keywords. It's really great kind of a strategy that she did. Yeah. So you really need to think about that. You need to think about your description, and then you need to think about your cover art. Camille, is your cover art, does it have a picture of you on it? I would love to know, because from what I've heard is a picture of yourself is better than not a picture of yourself. It depends on your topic. I mean, if you're a true crime and you're just talking about crime, you shouldn't have a picture of yourself. But if you're positioning yourself, as the expert, then you should have a picture of yourself. Or I mean, there's another podcast called Almost 30. There's two girls that talk about their lives as they almost hit 30. They have illustrations of themselves. It's like
I need a podcast Almost 40.
I'm sure there's one already out there too, though. There's so much out there already. But the thing is, that's great that I wanted to point on. They started with this thing of Almost 30, where they were 20-something-year-olds that were trying to navigate their transition from 20s into 30s. But the thing is that after a certain time, you transition into 30s. And so then they had to pivot their podcast. And they did pivot it, and they created this huge community. So don't ever think like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this, because what if I turn 30 and then I have to change the name of the podcast? Or what if, I don't know, like I run out of things to say? Like, there's always ways of pivoting. There's always way of changing. So don't overthink it too much. And that's just what I wanted to say. Just do it. And if you need to pivot, you can pivot. but don't make it super short term, like my life as a 23-year-old, because then, I mean, you're but by the time you're famous on podcasts, you'll probably be like 32. So no, just joking. So that's really important as well. So in terms of podcast imagery, you can do it yourself on Canva. You can hire someone. I love Fiverr. Fiverr's tricky sometimes because you can get some good people, you can get some bad people. So you really need to test it out. And so
I'm a big fan of Upwork, actually. I used to be on Fiverr, but then I moved on Upwork. And actually, there are people specializing just on that, on design for podcasting imagery. So
yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's also, if you really want, because there's two different ways you can go. It's like a hobbyist or like, no, I'm full in 100%. And if you're full in 100%, there's like podcast managers or podcast people that will like basically organize everything for you. And that's when you get super popular. I'm going to tell you, like, also with podcasting, don't expect to upload something and be like, yay, 100,000 downloads. It doesn't work like that.
Forget about it.
No, it's a long-term process. This is why you need to talk about something that you love and you're passionate about, because it has to come out consistently. So if you're going to do a podcast, you need to stick to a schedule. I will publish one podcast every month or every week or every day. But if you say, this is my schedule, you can't change it in like 2 months. Like, oh no, I'm going to just stop posting for 3 months.
Yeah. And do you do it all by yourself? Or is that
so for me, for example, I don't know. I would like to hire someone to do the audio editing, to tell you the truth. I'm already looking for people to do the audio editing for me, because I think that's it's a little bit too much in terms of stitching things together. So let me just go into a little back up a little bit. First of all, I want to say that podcasting, it doesn't need to be expensive. A lot of people think, like, whenever you see professional podcasters and they have like mixing boards and these weird like microphone arms coming in at different directions, you don't need that. No, I want to get that, but I can't, because Amazon is like temporary out of stock of all microphones. So
it's crazy. All the audio and video stuff is bought out. I don't know if Olade is still listening to us, but she was telling me that she wanted to buy a web camera, and it's just forget about it. Everything is like sold out.
Everything is sold out. So you know what I did today? I took my Beats earphones, I put them on, and I hit play, and I recorded like that. And that was zero investment for me, because I used Zencastr. I was actually recommended Zencastr from Jenna Kutcher. She also uses it. There's a free version, but there can also be a paid version. And what's really cool about Zencastr is that you send a link, the person comes onto the platform, and you have 2 audio tracks, which I think is really great, because once you're editing, if you're going to edit, it's great to edit like when you have 2 audio tracks, because if I was talking over someone, let's say we're talking at the same time, it's so much easier to edit like my part out, so that you can hear the other person's part. But if the audio track is on top of each other, it is almost, I'm not an audio engineer, but I'm assuming that it'd be very difficult to try to separate the 2 voices off of that.
Okay.
Zencastr,
Zencastr is editing tool.
No, it's not. It's a recording tool.
It's a recording tool, but not editing tool.
I don't know if the free version does not allow you to edit. I don't know if the paid version does, but I'm not sure about that.
And where do you edit, or we are coming to that?
Yes, we're good. It's great. You're excited. I love it.
I am.
So that's the thing. I think it's really great to have 2 tracks. If you can record on everything. Like you can record on Skype if you want, like you can do that as well. There's so many different ways of recording. So choose what you want to do and stick with it. or change it up if you don't like one. I mean, whatever you like. In terms of editing, so there are free versions and there are paid versions. Anchor is great. Yeah. Well, I'm biased because I work for Spreaker, so I'm just gonna go with like I think Spreaker is better than Anchor, but like I said, I'm biased. So when you edit, there's paid and free versions. If you have a Mac and you have GarageBand, you can edit audio in GarageBand.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I heard. I have an Adobe. So I have an Adobe package thing because I'm still a student and I got like a really cool student deal for all of them. And there is, but when I opened it up, I got scared, to tell you the truth. Because it was so like fancy and all these levers and buttons, and that's why when I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to.
I'm such bad friends with Adobe, really, since it started with Photoshop, and I struggled so much using it. I was like, okay, we are not friends, and we're probably never gonna be friends. So I'm using like whatever, Canva, all those easy tools to use. So probably go for GarageBand.
Yeah. I can't think. I remember there was others. Oh yeah, Audacity. I think Audacity is also free. But I mean, I think if you just Google free, and I just did right now, free editing for a podcast, there's so many things that come up. I just did it now, and there's a bunch of different recommendations on free and paid versions, whatever you want to do. For me personally, the thing with editing, I think it's really important is that you're going to have to, it's going to get a little bit more difficult in this sense. When you have a podcast, you probably heard it, you need to have an intro and an outro, right? You've heard it. It's like, welcome to the blah, blah, blah podcast, a podcast where we talk about da, 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 right? Yeah. That's usually stitched on to the audio file. So you have to put some things together. You need to organize how you're going to do it. And I would really recommend, if you really want to do a podcast, listen to how the pros are doing it, because they do like one of the things that I really like what some people do is they take a very valuable tidbit that the guest said, like, I think branding is the new blah, blah, or whatever. And then you put it as the intro, like the hook.
Yeah.
And you have that hook, and then you cut to your intro, and then you cut to your episode, and then you have your outro. Does that make sense?
And you first said a template, or I misunderstood something that you use. It's good that you use maybe certain template for developing your intro, or this is not what you said.
So maybe I said that, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. In terms of how you develop your intro, it really depends on you. I would recommend just looking at other people and how they did theirs. And again, if you want someone to do your intro, you can do that. You can hire people as well. There's a lot of people on Fiverr. There's a lot of people on, I'm guessing, on Upwork. And you can ask, like, you can record your voice and they can put it on the music and they can do your intro for you. And then they send you the MP3 file and you just put it onto all of your episodes at the beginning. Usually it's a music thing. And you usually, from what I've heard, it's very introductory, like, welcome to the da-da-da. I'm your host, and we talk about da-da-da. This week on da-da-da, we're going to be talking to blah, blah, blah. One of the most important things that we've learned from this podcast is da-da-da. And now the podcast, something like that. I mean, you could, if you don't want to add in the like description of the podcast, like what the episode is about, you don't have to do that. It's very important to note that if you're going to use music in your podcast, never, ever, ever use commercial music. Please do not do that, because you will get blocked by Apple Podcasts. You'll get blocked and like, it'll be a mess. So the two options that you need to do is free copyright-free music and paid copyright-free music. Paid.
Where do you? Yeah, you're talking about it.
So in terms of free copyright-free music, you can get it anywhere. I mean, YouTube has a whole list of free copyright-free music. I think if you Google like YouTube free music library or something like that, I can add all these links afterwards. Also, if you just remind me, like, what is that thing that you talked about by YouTube? I need the link.
Mhm.
So there's that option, and you can Google also free copyright, free music. There's a lot. The problem with that is that your intro might sound like a lot of other people's intros, so it might not be as unique. That depends if you care or not. And then copyright or paid copyright free music is usually like these music libraries where you have to pay a subscription, and you pay like a monthly fee of whatever, or you can pay one-time fee for music. Like there's a music clip and you pay $10 for that clip. And so you download that. And so there's a bunch of them. I'm going to start Googling things here. But I can add the link afterwards, because we as Spreaker, we have like, if you come and host on us, we have relationships with some podcast from some music libraries where you get like a specific, I think, discount or something, because we have that kind of a relationship that we created with specific companies.
Mm-hmm.
Can we use? Do we wait until
the question?
Can we use podcasts as an audio book, or what technology apps would you recommend for an audio book? Do you mean that you want to record a podcast, like read? I'm not quite sure about that question. In terms of podcasting, in terms of listening to audiobooks, I listen to Audible. I use Audible, but there's a lot of, I think, other things. I don't think that podcasting is made like I don't think people are reading books and then putting them up on Apple Podcasts, for example. I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me on that.
That's interesting, this question, because I can see there is quite a thin line now between podcasts and audio books.
Yeah.
And I think it's a new trend, because people who are doing podcasts, they're starting to make, let's call them short podcasts, which are labeled as audiobooks, and then they're put on Amazon as like magnet leads.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So actually, the book that I've recently listened to was How to Start a Podcast, and that was literally, it was a 1 hour audio book by a podcaster who was upselling his other services and bigger courses on podcasting. Yeah,
there you go. I mean, I think when you think of, because there's also people that in the true crimes, I think genre, they read stories. It's a dramatic kind of like they're acting out a story in terms of like the crime. So they probably have a script. But I mean, if you have a book and it's, I don't know, 3 hours long, I don't think you would have a podcast for 3 hours reading your book, unless you wanted to cut it up or you want to add certain things to it. So
yeah, I can see that. So it's Gabriela. Gabriela, thanks for your questions. So Gabriela is asking, like, if I write a book, can I record myself reading it to the public and publish it as a podcast?
There's nothing stopping you from doing that.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, you can do that. I would just recommend like cutting it up in small little pieces, because there's also people don't want to. I mean, you know what? For me, I don't have too much experience in terms of like people who want to read a book and then publish it as a podcast. So I can say that you can do that definitely, and then test it out. See, is anyone downloading it? What are the reactions of people? Are they saying it's too long, it's too short, they want something else? And then just kind of test it. I think podcasting is so great because you can test so many different things and do so many different things. So definitely. And make sure to make it like, interesting. I think the voice, I think audio and how you speak and the tone and the way is really important. So I think the great thing about audio, the great thing about podcasts, it's not a lot. Video is so much more expensive, and I think takes so much more time to edit it and to like really get all the equipment. And audio is so much easier for you. But the important thing out of all of this is your audio needs to be on par. Like it needs to be good. So you have to make sure that your audio is good. And if it's not, you need to edit it into that point where people are not, there's no echo, there's no ooh. Because that's also extremely annoying to hear. Just think about it. I mean, would you want to hear an hour of ums? I don't think you would. So I kind of lost my train of thought of where I was before.
Maybe we can go into the part where you actually upload. Where do you upload your podcasts?
Yeah, perfect. So once you stitch everything together, once you decide, the first thing that you should be doing is like you should be figuring out where you want to be hosting. So you're going to get something like called an RSS feed. That is like where your home is for your podcast. You, depending on who you choose, you will have possibilities to own your RSS feed or not own your RSS feed. So it depends on the hosting company. I don't have all the experience of all the other hosting companies, but I know that Spreaker, you know, your RSS feed is your own RSS feed. So if you decide, for example, that you're with Spreaker for 1 year and you're just like, I hate this, I don't want it, I want to go somewhere else, you can do that as well. That's the great thing about going on to hosting companies. You can change if you want. And there are hosting companies that if you're doing well, they'll try to incentivize you to come to their platform if you have a certain amount of downloads, et cetera, et cetera.
So basically, the company you're working for, they are also a hosting company.
So they are a hosting company. So Spreaker is a hosting company. It's you go in, you have so basically what happens in any company, any hosting company, is you have a free version, and that free version gives you a limited amount of audio storage. So you can only record X amount of time until you have to upgrade into another plan. And then there's different types of plans depending on what your needs are as a podcaster. So you need to understand also, what do you want to accomplish with your podcast? Because if you're like, no, you know, this is a hobby, I don't really care that much, you don't need to go into like the pro versions of the plans, you know? But if you're like, no, I really want to grow this, I want to get money for this, you can get paid for your podcast. And we can touch upon that as well, on how do you monetize your podcast, because there is money into it if you want to do that. Yes.
2 questions. I've got 2 questions. Girls, by the way, if you have questions, also do shoot. So there are 2 major platforms you need for podcasting. So the first one is hosting. This is basically where you keep your files.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are, let's call them streaming platforms, like Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast. This is basically where you probably take the link from your hosting platform and you put it into broadcasting one.
Yes, but it's all connected to your RSS feed. So everything is connected to that RSS feed that you're going to have. But
this is the sort of thing. This is the sort of thing. It's
yes.
like standalone thing.
Yeah, like your RSS feed is the most important thing that you need, because it's where your podcasts will be. Like it's basically the thing that if you decide that this is going to get technical, and I'm not a huge techie person, so excuse me if I don't explain this as well as I should. But the RSS feed, like your stuff is in a cloud, and that's the link to that specific place where all of your podcasts are. If you decide to move, you can move to another place, and that's fine. The RSS feed is the most important. So basically what happens is when you're hosting on a platform like Spreaker, all of your stuff is there. And then when you distribute it, so you're distributing that link to the other like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. There's so many. I'm going to tell you, there's so many different like distribution platforms. So what happens there is that everything is still connected to your hosting platform. So if you distribute to Apple Podcasts or into Spotify and all of the data people that's happening on Apple Podcasts is funneled back into your hosting platform, so that you can see how many downloads you've had. Depending on your plan that you have, you can look at analytics, like who are they, where are they downloading from, which country they're downloading from, and all that kind of information. And so it's all connected. Spreaker is really great because it gives you a one-click distribution. So you set up everything, and then you upload your podcast to Spreaker, and then it'll have like all these buttons, and you just click like, I want to distribute to Apple, then Spotify, then this, then this, then this, and you go click, 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 and you're done.
I still don't understand where RSS feed comes in.
So that's just your podcast. That's the representation of your podcast. It's where your shows are. I tell it 1 sec. If I can so it's where, I mean, let me
explain it in your own words. Yeah.
Because I was looking
I clearly understand the hosting part, and I understand the streaming part. Broadcasting.
Your URL for your podcast.
Your URL for your
podcast.
Meaning, okay, I think I started understanding. That means that, for example, I have a website, and I have that podcast on my website. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, your website, for example, is your podcast. And when you want to share your website to other people, you would give your URL, like, hey, this is where you can find my website. You know, this is the URL. So an RSS feed is like that. It's like, hey, this is where all my podcasts are. It's in this feed. It's in this RSS feed, my URL for my podcast. So that's the link that gets distributed out. And then that one URL, like that one RSS feed, it allows you to get all the data because it's
okay. So I think I will try to explain it so others would understand. I would understand it myself, telling it in my own words. So, for example, you have created your podcast. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit heavier than images, for example, and you can't upload it directly to your website, right? So you need to host it somewhere, like at Sprinkle, for example.
Yeah.
So you go to Sprinkle.
Spreaker.
Spreaker.
Yeah.
Spreaker. Is it correct?
Yeah.
Spreaker. So you go to Spreaker. You upload your audio, and you get the link probably that you can pull to your website.
Yes, or to Apple Podcasts, or to iTunes, or to wherever.
Okay.
That's the link to your podcast that you can distribute to wherever you want to distribute your podcast to.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. I think I got it.
Okay. Sorry. I like.
No. I mean, I know it's complex, and that's why probably one of the reasons I couldn't grasp this idea how it works when I was following different courses and podcasts as well about that. But I think it's clear now, and I hope whoever is listening to us is clear as well. If it's not, do ask. You have a possibility now.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's very important to own your RSS feed, to have ownership of that. Because if you decide, for example, I like I said, I'm at Spreaker, I have it there, but I decide I don't like Spreaker. I want to go to another hosting. I want to go somewhere else. It's like owning your URL. I think I might have frozen. Oh no, I'm good. We're back. Yeah. Sorry. It's like having your own URL, right? You want to own that, because if you decide, like if you have a website, for example, it can be the same kind of concept. If I decide I want to host with like one hosting company and I don't like it and I want to move it somewhere else, you need to be able to have the ownership of that link to be able to move it. Because if you don't have ownership, then they can tell you like, you can't move to another, or you lose everything. Like,
and in Spreaker you can. Yeah.
So and like it depends on wherever you go in whatever aspect you want to do, whatever podcasting hosting you want to do, you have to double check, like, do I own the RSS feed? If I do choose to move, can I move? I think that's really an important question, because you don't want to, like, 1 year or 2 years down the line when you have 200 episodes, that you lose everything because, you know, something happens.
Yeah. And are you on Spreaker yourself? I suppose you are. Yeah. You're podcasting. Well, what a stupid question. So are you paying anything now? Are you on free plan for now or not?
No, so because I'm an employee of Spreaker, I have more I have more options than other people. I have the option to go into like a more professional plan.
Yeah.
So one of the great things about Spreaker is, I'm going to touch on monetization just a little bit, is like you can monetize your podcast on, like, not the free plan, on the paid plans. You can start monetizing your podcast from the beginning. Like, you just started, that's fine. You can monetize it. Like, there's no threshold in terms of, oh, you need to reach X amount of downloads to be able to monetize. This doesn't mean that you're going to get like $5,000 in a month, but it means that, like, you can start maybe earning some money from your podcast. And that's really great. And you can, we have all these certifications. We have the ability to do really cool analytics in terms of understanding who your audience is. And then if you go really, really into like the very high end plans, we have something called like the ad manager, where you can add in your own ads. We're going to start getting into like really specific things that I don't think you guys need to know in terms of like dynamic ads and live reads and like all these kinds of things. But
you know, I just want to clarify it a little bit, because, you know, when you started talking about monetization, I think you started talking about ads directly, ads placement. So basically it works more or less the same way as AdSense works in Google. Like, you have your website and you let people put ads on your website. So that's what you're talking about. But there are there are also other ways of monetization. I mean, you will continue about yours. I'm super interested, and I'm sure the audience is interested as well. But just so that you know, I mean, not you, but listeners, other types of monetizations like partnerships, sponsorships, where you basically partner up with other companies, where you're talking about their products and then you get a commission and something like that. But yeah, let's move to ads. That sounds interesting.
But monetization is that as well. So there's two different types of ads. Sorry, I saw a question. So what are the ways to earn money from a podcast that is free from people to listen? I didn't understand that question. Could you maybe my talking about monetization might help in this? Let me
just to clarify. Maybe I understand. I don't know, because so when you listen for podcasts on Spotify, do you have a paid Spotify, right? So you can
free to Spotify as well.
So, say it again.
For you, like, podcasts are free for your listeners. They never have to pay anything to listen to your podcast ever.
Yeah. Apart from subscription to the platform, right?
No, your listeners, no. I mean, you can listen. I have to pay, but if you want to listen to me, you don't have to pay anything to listen to me. So, I mean, if you go on Apple Podcasts, for example, I can listen to any podcast without having to subscribe for anything. I can subscribe to the list so that I can get notification when a new episode comes along, but I don't pay to listen. I pay to create the podcast. And then if I want to earn money, you cannot earn money on podcasts. You can earn money different ways. You can earn money through merch, like you can do merchandising and sell merch through your podcast, but you can do ads and you can do live reads. And live reads are what you're talking about in terms of sponsorships. So let's say I'm a digital marketing individual and Fiverr reaches out to me and says like, hey, you know, you talk to digital marketers all the time. can you talk about Fiverr and how like it can help digital marketers? And usually what happens is they'll look at your downloads. So that's really important. They'll look at how many downloads you've had, your audience, where are they coming from? So that's why it's really important to maybe have one of those higher paid subscriptions, because you need to know who is it that who is listening to your podcast, because no one's going to sponsor you if you don't know anything about your podcast. They're just going to be like, I'm sorry, it doesn't work for us. You need to know your download numbers. You need to know who is listening, female, male. You need to understand the States, France, Germany, wherever. And then you can be able to present that to sponsors and be like, this is it. And then you can go into payments. And it's like, I will pay $300 for you to have a live read on your podcast. A live read is, this episode is sponsored by Fiverr. If you guys have any interesting tasks that you need to do, I would recommend that you go on Fiverr. They can also ask you to add a link so that they can track your conversion. So if you want my 10% discount, go to fiverr.com/digital marketing. And then they can track that, see how many people actually went on that link. Or you can just do downloads. So at the end of the month, they'll say like, we are not going to do a link. We're just going to put it in your podcast. After 1 month, send us how many downloads of that episode you got. And if you underperform, they probably will never work with you before. If you and if you overperform, they'll probably want to like have an ongoing partnership. So that's live reads. And then there's the ads, which are dynamically inserted. So if you go into like any podcast, I'm going to talk to Spreaker because I don't know how it is on other platforms. I know how Spreaker works. On Spreaker, you can create like cues in your actual. So the problem with live reads is they're baked in, meaning that if you say it into your audio, it will be there forever. And some people don't like that. They're like, well, I want to swap them out. I want to allow Fiverr for March. And then for April, I want Upwork to talk. So what you can create is you can create like sections in your podcast that you create like a cut. And then we have an ad manager, which you then can insert into those cuts and they can change. I don't know if that makes sense for everyone, but it's like if I have my audio, I upload it on my audio. I know that at minute 15.05, I paused. And in that pause, I will have a cue point. And in that cue point, I will have an ad for Fiverr for the month of March. And then I will remove that ad. And then in the month of June, I will add, I don't know, whoever, Upwork or whatever, So there's different ways of actually monetizing your podcast depending on what you want to do. And what's the best platform to open a podcast? As I said before, I am very biased. It's Spreaker, Spreaker, Spreaker. I would really recommend that platform. I think it's great. But like I said, I am biased. So
can I have another question? Yeah. So when you host, for example, your podcast in Spreaker, and you said you can distribute it on different, let's call them broadcasting platforms.
Yeah.
Is it free or you have to pay for it?
It's free.
So if you want to post something on Spotify, let's say, you don't need to pay for Spotify?
I'm not quite sure about Spotify, but I know that, for example, if you wanted to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, I mean, we have a whole list of it. Let me see. I can actually pull up the list.
Because I thought, so for example, you want to create your profile with all your podcasts on Spotify, then you need to buy a subscription.
No, because you can listen to free podcasts for free on Spotify as well. So I just pulled up the Spreaker website. We have a blog, and it's had an article that we wrote about this called the one-click distribution. And so, for example, here it says when you syndicate, so when you distribute it, it's syndicating your podcast to key platforms, right? And so, for example, these are the lists. It's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Deezer, and Podcast Addict. So those are some of the ones that you can distribute. And like I said, it's like a one-click. You have to have certain specifications. Like Apple Podcasts, there's a certain amount, like the cover art has to be X amount of like size and pixels. So you need to know what the requirements are from each of the distribution platforms. I can include the link for the Spreaker blog, and it tells you exactly how you can do it on Spreaker and how easy it is. And you don't have to pay for that. You don't pay for any of that.
Okay. There is still one thing which is not really clear for me. So when you do the distribution, it doesn't go just into random space, right? You're supposed to have your profile in each broadcaster. Like in Deezer, you need to have an account in Deezer, in Apple Podcasts, in Spotify, in Stitcher, with the name of your channel, with your picture, with your description. Is that right?
No, because your RSS feed has all that information already. So all the information that you have, I have to double check on this exactly, and how it works. And I'll get back to you guys on exactly how that works.
Okay, yeah, you see, there is a comment that says, I think Anna means if you need to pay each platform where you want to distribute.
No, you don't need to. No.
Sounds good
So
to me.
like an example here, there's a picture. I can't show it to you here, but there's a picture of, and I'll send the link to you. For example, if you are distributing on Spotify, you have requirements that you need to do for Spotify, and then it'll check mark everything. So for example, and this is all done not on Spotify, but on Spreaker. So you say, okay, you need to create your title, a short description, the image, and they give you the specific image. It's a minimum of 1400 pixels with a maximum of, I think, 3000 pixels. And then the category, and then at least one public episode. And so you fill that all in, you write, okay, or it actually pulls it from, or it can also pull it from the actual episode, because when you upload an episode, you write all that. You write the title, you write the description, you write all of this, the image, everything is already in the hosting platform, which is Spreaker. And then the idea is that the distribution platforms like Apple, like Spotify, they take that information already that's there. You know, they take the title, they take the description, and they just re-upload it on their platform, and then you just distribute it that way.
Yeah, I'm curious though, anyways, because I think this needs to be clarified. Because, for example, when I am on SoundCloud, so this is where I usually listen to podcasts, I go to my favorite podcasters, and they have their profile, and under their profile they have like different kind of podcasts. So I was wondering if you first need to set up those profiles for yourself, and then do the distribution.
I have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure if you have to set up the actual like profile on Apple.
Let me rephrase the question, maybe, because so you started your podcasting and you are distributing on.
So the thing is, I work for Spreaker. I started my podcasting, but I haven't actually distributed, or like my launch date is July. So I haven't like published any episodes at this moment in time. Okay. So that's why I'm, in terms of distribution, I know that we do one-click distribution. I know that, you know, you click one button. I'm not quite sure, and I will get back to you guys on it, on whether before you can distribute, if you have to open up accounts on every single platform. My assumption is no. but I'm not 100% on that. So I will make sure that in the group afterwards, I will clarify this point on whether or not you need to physically open a profile and account on every single platform that you want to distribute.
Okay.
And I will make sure to get back to you on that because I'm not 100% on that.
Great. Because yeah, this is an important question. I was already thinking which platform to choose because yeah, probably you need to pay for that. I don't know. You also need to figure out that. So yeah,
The thing is, the more the merrier. Like our argument is this: you don't have to pay to be on any of these platforms. You should be syndicating, or you should be putting your podcast out as many places as you physically can. So if it's Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, whatever, Castbox, put it everywhere. You don't have to pay. I mean, if you have to set up a profile, like I said, I'll get back to you, but that might take 2 minutes to do that. You're not going to pay for any of these things. You're not paying. You will never pay. I mean, not never, because I don't know, maybe Apple's going to change their strategy here. But at this moment in time, if you are on Spreaker and you decide I want to distribute my podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on it, you do not pay Apple Podcast. Like, you don't pay for that. You pay for us if you want to distribute for your plan, but you don't pay for those platforms.
Okay, that's good to know. I've got another question, though. I think it's quite important when you want to keep your podcast on your website. I don't know if you can answer that question because it's also quite technical from what I have understood.
Yeah.
How to basically integrate your podcast into your website.
Yeah, it's super simple. You get like an embedded link. And you just embed that link into your website.
But embedded link from
your hosting platform. So basically, what will happen if you're in Spreaker, you can get an embedded link. I think you can change a couple of things of the actual. It's still branded with Spreaker, unfortunately. So it's very Spreaker. It's the Spreaker colors and stuff, but it's a player. You get an embedded link. You put it you go to your website, you put the link in there, and there's the embedded player, and people can play right off of your website and click play. And it's still connected to the Spreaker podcast, the Spreaker hosting platform. So you'll still get like numbers in terms of like impressions and et cetera, et cetera. If you want to go like super fancy, there's also a lot of, and I'm going to do this really quickly. I don't know if I can. Oh no, it's on my other thing. Fusebox, I think it's what it's called. One sec. Yeah, Fusebox. Fusebox for your podcast. So this is if you want to go fancy and you want to pay for something and you want to have a nice, beautiful player. And this one is actually really, really cool because, and this is when your RSS feed like plays in. I'm pretty sure I haven't used Fusebox, but it actually even allows you to have CTAs on your embedded player, which is amazing. I love it. The first time I saw this was on Screw the 9 to 5 podcast. They had it on their website, and they had a link to some sort of mastermind that they were doing, and you clicked on that, and it opened up a messenger chatbot. And they said, like in their podcast, like, click the call to action in our player and be part of our mastermind and So that was really cool. And you can actually do that on Fusebox. Fusebox has two options. It has a transcriptor. I think it's, I'm not exactly sure if it does it for you automatically, if it provides the transcripts of your podcast, but then it also provides you with this really, really cool podcast player that you can customize, that you can add like a call to action, whether it's a join newsletter. It's really pretty. And so if you want to go like super professional, that could be, or just Google maybe Fusebox competitors and see if there's anything else out there if you want it to go fancy.
Okay, interesting. So we've got a question.
Yes.
So is every podcast solution provider?
Spreaker tied to specific. Yes. Audible is not a podcast platform. Audible is book like it's a different type of thing. So there's two specific things. There's audiobooks and then there's podcasts. So Audible is audiobooks. So people who have published books and then have audio versions of those books. You can also do audiobooks on podcasts, but you cannot do podcasts on Audible books tools. Ah!
Yeah. You said that.
So yeah, we don't distribute on Audible because it's not a podcasting platform.
Yeah, makes sense. So we are speaking already for more than an hour, or like 1 hour and 6 minutes. Like time flies when you have fun. Maybe you can tell us, like as a conclusion, a bit about Spreaker, if it is a good fit for solopreneurs, and what is the pricing, and if there are possible discounts for fearless female founders.
Ooh, I actually haven't thought of that, but I'm pretty sure that I can pull like 1 month free or something like that for anyone who is interested in trying out Spreaker, like 1 month free of our broadcaster plan. So we have different types of plans for Spreaker. We have, so there's the free one. Then there's the on-air talent, which is six euros a month. And you have your RSS feed. You actually can even start monetizing on that on that plan if you want to monetize. Monetizing, when we talk about monetizing, I'm not talking about like live reads, which I said where, the Fiverr example. It's literally just automatic placements in your podcast, and you don't really have any control in terms of what is being shown or on that feed. So it's a little different. If anyone wants to learn more about monetization, it's very complicated, but I can have a conversation with you guys afterwards on it. It's very interesting. So I personally really interested in monetization. Our most popular plan is like the broadcaster. It's 18 euros a month. It has, advanced statistics. And so you can even also on this one, you can create limited, limited access to your podcast. So if you want to provide podcasts for specific people, there's different things that you can do. And then when we go into like the Anchorman, which is the 45 euros per month, you can do like customizable player colors, full statistics, programmatic monetization, and you can also have multiple podcasts. If you decide that I want to create 4 different podcasts, you can do that on like Spreaker. You can have 4 podcasts and still be paying, 45 euros a month, for example. So you don't have to buy a plan for each podcast that you create, which is kind of nice as well. So I will have to get back to you on the free offer, but I'm pretty sure that I can pull something together for anyone who is interesting. So in terms of the last one, what is voice training? I heard gargling with salt water is really good. I haven't tried it, but I heard this is really good. If you try it, you're going to have to let me know how that works, because I don't know if I'm brave enough to do that. But yeah, and Spreaker is great because we are multilingual. We have a really great monetization possibilities for people who really want to monetize their platform. We have a great program called the Prime program. So with people who have 5,000 downloads or more, we have great offerings for them in our Prime program. We have like advanced statistics. We are with Nielsen, which is like this big company in the States that provides advanced analytics. We have a lot of cool things and cool options. And I would really recommend people just checking out our website or our blog. I'm just about to publish, like if some of you have a podcast, I'm about to publish.
Sorry, my computer is low on battery. I'll be back.
If you have a podcast and you want to know how to promote your podcast, I'm going to be publishing a series on the Spreaker blog, The Ultimate Guide to Promoting Your Podcast. It's going to be published today or tomorrow. So it's great to learn about, you have a podcast, should you have a website? Should you include transcripts into your website? Why or why not? Should you be using Squarespace, Wix, or WordPress? What social media should you be using? What are audiograms? etc., etc., etc.
So
So
the trainings you're saying.
no, it's a blog article that I'm going to be publishing on the Spreaker blog, so people can just learn more about how to promote. Because I think one of the biggest things that once people start their podcast, the second question is, okay, well, how do I get people to listen to my podcast? That's like the second biggest thing, because it's hard. It's hard to get people to listen because then marketing comes into play. Like, how do you market yourself? And I think that people sometimes don't know what to do.
That's a big topic indeed. So we will wait for the link from you to follow on that. I will address one more question in here, and then we will summarize a little bit.
Okay.
And then we are going to wrap it up. So about the voice, by the way, girls, I wanted to ask you, because I know a very good specialist who is in our group, who is a professional how do you call it, overlay recorder? You know, the people who talk for ads and podcasts as well. Sarah Clays. I used to work with her in an agency. She has an amazing voice. The way she manages it, it's crazy. So what we can do, if there is enough of interest, she could give us a training. I wouldn't expect, though, I don't expect it to be for free. And I want starting to walk away from that, because I think everyone, you know, what was the word? Everyone deserves to be paid for their efforts. So if you are interested in that, maybe I will post a questionnaire there, and we will see if we can bring her for an hour or two, so she could give us a training, not for a very high price, but you know, it's a professional training. Voila. So Yvonne, I think it was super useful. I've got so much more clarity now, and I still need to find time, you know, to, for example, turn this kind of videos into podcasts and just store them for people, you know, to be able to listen them whenever they want, whenever it is comfortable for them.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful, like extremely grateful. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I know that you're moving to Portugal, but I hope we will not lose you. You will be still in our Fearless Female Founders group. So we will wait for 3 things from you. The link on Spreaker, the offer, if it is possible. And there was the third thing, if you need to
open up your
if you need to have accounts on every platform that you are distributing into. Okay, girls, if you don't have any questions, we are going to finish the session. Thank you so much for being with us.
I just wanted to add one more thing. If anyone has also any other podcasting questions, like if something I didn't cover, something that wasn't clear, something that you want me to go into more in depth about, please message me. You can add me on Facebook. You can follow me on Instagram. I mean, I'm here to converse and to talk to you guys about all of your problems and all of your questions about podcasting. And I really love the subject, so I'm open here to have that conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Yvonne. Thanks so much, everyone who was watching. Bye, girls. See you at the next session.